Okay, let's finish up this week by packaging all of our information, all of our setup for our legs here into a nice HDA. Something I did in between the last few videos was I separated out our blends for our right leg and our left leg, and I did so by selecting our right legs up here and our left legs over here. And then I used our left leg chain as our main chain, temporary main chain, and I selected our sorry, I have that switched around, my bad. I used our right leg chain as our main chain, and I used the left leg as the only points that we were blending. So we had our choice of our right leg over here, our choice of our left leg, and then they got blended together right here because we're using our right leg chain by default, and we're blending in our left leg, and then we put that into our bone to form. Perfect. So now we want to make a new HDA and package this all into that HDA so that we can easily hand it off to an animator. Say, here are all your tools that you need to for animating, at the very least, the legs. And if at any point in the future we need to animate our legs, for instance, when we retarget our animations in the future and we want to have some controls that we already set up, we can use this HDA that we're creating, put it down after our retargeted skeleton, and start animating with these tools that we've already built. And we can also set up other HDAs with this same method to do that tool stacking that I explained in a previous video, where we can change our world space, kind of, doing our freeform rigging, what have you, whatever you want to call it, where we switch between IK and FK based on where we are in our animation or where we are in our where our animator wants to be. Maybe they animate an FK for a bit, they get things as good as they want to in FK, and then they want to hone it in with some IK. That's where we can just create a HDA system to allow them to put down whatever tools they need at that time. So I'm going to demonstrate that HDA creation with our kind of Uber leg rig right here. I'm going to start the same way I did before in creating our capture rig up here, our skinned mesh. I'm going to create a subnet, and I'm going to create an HDA from that. So create a digital asset. I'm going to call it the cyborg FKIK legs. Perfect. Let's just create that. We need one input, which is going to be our deform skeleton, and a maximum of one output, which is going to be our deform skeleton after the fact of our rigging here with our legs. So we can name that. We could just have it be deform skeleton, and our output is our deform skeleton. And we can apply, and we can accept it for now. We don't need any files associated with this node like we did with our skinned rig, because we have all of our nodes here. So we just need to put all of our nodes into this HDA, everything except for our capture / skinned HDA and our bone to form. So we're just going to take everything. We want to make sure we grab everything. So I'm going to open up this group that we started with. Make sure we take everything with us. There we go. Just going to Control X that. So we're cutting it. Going to put our subnet right here, because it is now our control system. And I'm going to go inside of it, and I'm going to paste all of our nodes here. There we go. And remember, our input is what we need to put as our merge, where we had it before. And our input is where we need to If we had connected our skeleton at any point throughout this other than our merge, we would need to hook our input into that, but it doesn't look like we have that. So, and then we use our output from our skeleton blend right there. Now when we control this, if we put our visual display on our bone deform, unfortunately when we dive in, we won't get to see it for the time being, but if we position our something like our cog and we pop back up to our geometry level here outside of our HDA, we can see that it has worked and we have everything flowing through this one node now. We'll want to make sure we save that node as we progress through this. So save node type, or if you're worried about it not saving that way, you can always come in here and hit apply. The way we promote parameters, if you've never created HDAs before, is we select our node that we want to promote parameters from, and I'm going to make sure all of our data is cleared from it. We need to make sure we add the joints that we want, so we'll click on the joints we need. So we have all 4 of our joints here. We can now promote any of these parameters that we want to up to our HDA level. So for instance, let's take our root here. We'll take our root translation. We can just grab the translation, put it under right there, put it under our root, and we can see we get a new parameter inside of our existing parameters tab here. It gets given a name, which is the parameter name. Under here we can see translate, and it says parameters with a colon there, and it has T1x, T1y, T1z. That parameter name is what you're going to be calling in HScript or Python or whatever scripting language you need, Vex as well. So you want to make sure you name it something if you plan on using scripting in the future, and it's just good practice to name your parameters anyways. So we'll call this root trans, and this label is what the user can see. So for instance right here we get to see translate. So I'm just going to put add root in front of that, and you'll want to make sure you hit enter when you are editing these labels. Clicking off of them deletes or undoes the changes you made. Now if we hit apply, we can see that our translate parameter in our rig post for our root turns green. We get a channel reference now, because essentially what we've just done is when we pop back up, we've created a parameter here and we've automatically hooked up channel references in our old parameter. So you can do that by hand if you want to. You can just grab a float3, for instance, create its label and new parameter, and you can dive in here and create the channel references. But it's way easier and faster to just drag and drop your parameters that you need to and allow it to auto-generate those references. You can also, if there are aspects of your rig post that you don't want your animators or yourself to ever use in the future, something like scale for the root, you can right click on it and you can hit lock parameter. So now whenever someone is editing this root joint, we can see that the scale handle part of it has gone away. We can't select scale anymore to edit this root. We can only do translation and rotation. Now when we do a translation, we can see that value is applied to our node up here, our HDA, and it's applied down here because of that channel reference, but we can still edit rotation, as we can see, but we can't see that value. And it's because we haven't added it to our parameters yet. We can notice we can't reset values here either, because our values are actually stored on our HDA now. So I'm going to go through and reference all of the rig pose data that we want, and I will, at points, I'll make some comments on organizing our HDA to appear more friendly to the user as well. But this will take you a little bit of time, so go through, look back at all the rig post controls that we've made, and promote those parameters to your root. I have a word of warning and wisdom before getting started with that. Sometimes this promotion can get a little bit finicky. You can add a parameter here, hit apply, and your parameter will be created on your HDA, but the channel reference won't be auto-generated sometimes. There must be a minor bug in Houdini for some reason. So you'll want to make sure you double check that the references are created when you create your new parameters. So some things we can do to help organize our HDA when we're creating all these parameters is we can start to create folders. When we create a folder and we can give that name, that folder a name, let's just call it main controls for now. And we'll give it a name, main controls, a label and a name. We can position parameters in that folder and then change where that folder is in our structure. When we hit apply, we can see certain aspects, or certain parameters, the parameters we put into that folder are now in a group. When we start to create sort of groups of when we start to create groups of controls, we can present the information, the parameters, much more easily to our animators. So maybe our LIK foot controls that were part of our main core controls system can fall into a group, a new folder. We might be able to call this left leg or something like that. And in the left leg, you can still put more folders in the left leg. And we can call this one left IKs, left IKs, and we can create one for left FKs. And when we hit apply, we can see how that's structured. We have our left leg, left IKs, left FKs. And we can position anything in those folders. So for instance, our blend here, we want our animator to be able to control that. We can put that under our left leg here. Call that left leg bias. Left IK, FK IK blend. And when we hit apply, we get a new channel reference, and we can see that that IKFK parameter is positioned before our folders. So we can always switch that IKFK and then switch our folder that we're looking at our parameters in and control our points from there. All right, good luck continuing to promote your parameters and organize your HDA. Okay, I've gone ahead and promoted all the parameters that I want to see in my rig here. I've accidentally parented some things in here. As we can see here, the left leg and the main chain are in the same folder system, and we could see that I separated out our left leg and our right leg by using a spacer. So I'm going to do so here just by placing a spacer right above the left leg, and if we hit apply, we can see everything gets separated out as we want to. I only promoted one of the parameters from our reverse foot node for now, just the roll. You can promote more if you want to. The advanced options are really nice. You can of course add a whole other folder if you want to for those reverse foot nodes, those reverse foot parameters. But right now we can't really, we can edit some things like the reverse foot, and of course we can edit by hand our parameters here, but we can't interactively act with our rig. And the reason for that is we need to apply a specific code, a specific key phrase into our into our HDA here. And I'm just trying to remember where it is. It's under node. If we put down a rig pose and we open up its type properties, we can see the exact phrase that we need to put into it. This default state, we need that default state to be the same so that we can interact with our HDA like it's a rig pose. Now once we click on our HDA, we have all of our joints available to us as if it's exactly a rig pose. And in fact, if we look at our HDA, we actually have multiple chains of rig pose data here because we're grabbing all of the rig poses within our HDA. We don't want all that information. In fact, it's really hindersome to us or animators to have all this information. So a way we can avoid promoting all that information to our HDA is, for instance, under our main control, we don't mind promoting all that data. But under our, let's say our offset here, something we don't need to promote any of our data for, we can come into settings over here. Under rig visualizer, we can add a parameter. We can say everything for this group. And under joint display, we can say we could turn off joints, we could turn off the polygon lines, and we could turn off packed geometry. So none of this information from this rig pose will be promoted anymore. If we come under here at our knee poles controls, we can do the same thing where we just grab, instead of everything, just the joints that we need or want to not show. And we can turn off show joints and other aspects of things. In a similar vein, if you want to add another configuration option, and let's say we choose the knees this time, we can promote these parameters if we want to allow our animator to be able to turn off and on, for instance, controls, which is our packed geometry, and the joints as well. Or we ourselves can turn off the joints on specific rig poses if we don't want them seeing, if maybe our animator says it's kind of annoying to see all those dots. We can do so in our rig pose. And we could promote these parameters if we want to give that control over to the animators. So we want to go through, look at all of our rig poses and remove the data that we don't want to be promoting. So once you've gone through to all of your rig poses and you remove that data that you don't want to see, you should be able to see just the aspects that you do want. So we can see that here. And like I said, I might go in and add some of those special configurations for like the FK and the IK controls so that we can add it into our right leg and left leg parameters here, and we can control which system we see, which control points we see, and be able to turn those on and off as we'd like to. And at that point, once everything is set up the way that you'd like with the controls turned off and the visualizations and the parameters promoted and the HDA has been saved, you've created this HDA now that you can give to your animators and be applied to this capture rig or your skinned rig, and can be used over and over again however you need to be. In fact, if you have other skeletons with the exact same naming convention and setup, maybe you had one skeleton in your pipeline and you just manipulated where those points were, or maybe you had a system where you create points and then create a skeleton from those points and you have a naming convention for those points, you can use this HDA exactly the same way across all of the other skeletons that have the same naming convention. So that has been a kind of introduction to creating HDAs and our rigging components. Next week we'll get into creating the rest of our components, and it'll go a little bit faster. because now we know all of the kind of tools we need. I'll just be talking about the specifics for setting up different things, like our neck will create a look at kind of system, and our spine will allow for the difference between a spline IK and a regular FK chain. Our arms are very straightforward. You can just do an FK and an IK system. And our hands will probably be what I spend most of our time on. So this week, get your legs in place, get your cog ready, and your HDA promoted and created.